Thank you, Tufan. I actually have to admit that I'm really excited. So if my voice shakes, just apologies. My name is Ceren Uner. I'm a human design analyst, guide, and teacher. And I'm not an expert on magnetic monopoles, but I will try to do my best today to introduce the basics of human design and the basic physics of human design as best as I can to physicists and all kinds of scientists here. So I hope it goes well. Well, we'll talk about our relationship to all things, and that's actually what we have been talking about since we gathered here. And this illusion that we live here consists of mechanical rules, and it's deeply organized. And within the context of the system, of the human design system that I'm going to explain, and there is actually no short version of explaining an introduction to human design, but since I have only 45 minutes, I will try to keep it really condensed and short. So there is nothing in the human design and also in our biverse that carries as much power and influence as the magnetic monopole, because it's really the monopole that is holding this illusion, this separateness all together. But first, I'm talking about this system here. How does it work? So the origin of the human design system, the system was originated back in 1987 when we all have experienced this unique astronomical event that is called supernova 1987A. It was the first supernova that we could observe with the naked eye from the Earth. So all around the Earth, people have gone through mystical experiences around that time, and one of those people was Alan Krakauer, with his name back then, who was in Ibiza in Spain, and he encountered a voice, as he calls it, that he heard a voice, and the voice told him, we gotta work. And then for 8 days he actually, we can call it a revelation, a channeling, whatever, it does not really matter what we call it. But for 8 days he has received this information, and then since he passed away in 2011, he basically experimented with this knowledge for almost 5 years, and after 5 years of experimenting on himself and on his environment, he has seen that this is a logical system of differentiation, a logical system of showing the differentiation in each unique being, not only in humans, but it does not actually matter that I go to a dog or a cow and explain them their design. So this is why it's a human design system, but every living being, every plant, every bug, every living being has a design in itself. So the voice said to Ra that from this time on, his name was going to be Ra Uruhu. And it's so funny that we have been talking about the word Uru since days here. And so he was told that this means the door closer. Yeah, the door closer. So Ra, the door closer, the portal closer. And here I will not go into details because it would take us another day to go into a detail, but we are a species that is going to extinct at some point, maybe 1,000 years, maybe more than 1,000 years, but of course nothing really vanishes, so we will transform into another species. So I will just keep it at that. But so the door closer means that this system is for us to live with dignity, to live with grace for these remaining times, whatever time we have left, so that we can really truly be ourselves and live correctly in harmony with each other. So he was told that he was going to be the clarion that was going to universalize this system to the earth. And so from 92 until 2011, when he died, he kept on doing that. And this is a true Uranian system of self-discovery, and we will see that's why we call it Uranian, because up until the discovery of planet Uranus by William Herschel, we were actually seven-centered beings. And here we have been talking about chakras, the energy flow within the body, the biofield since days. But actually, in terms of human design, that was the case for 90,000 years, the seven-centered Homo sapiens. The flow of energy was more unidirectional, whereas in the nine-centered Homo sapien intransitus, we do not have seven centers, but nine centers. And as you can see, all roads go to Rome, to the throat. So here with the evolution of the nine-centered being, we are here actually to not only to manifest but express our true selves, our true beings. And since our ancestors for approximately, let's say, 90,000 years have lived in this seven-centered, mentally directed, strategic life, what they have left us is science, music, philosophies, religions. So it's a very structured but also a very mental life. And since 1781, we are evolving into this nine-centered Homo sapien intransitus. So we are a species in transition. We are not evolved yet. We are evolving. We are not complete yet. We are still learning who we are. And this body graph, in short, we will see it in detail, is it's an amazing thing. The human design system works through these body graphs, and they are like fingerprints. It's different for each unique person, and as I said, for each and every living being. And when we come to the roots of the system, human design is a binary. It's a synthesis of exoteric, of scientific, with esoteric. So on the exoteric part, on the scientific part, we have astronomy, particle physics, neutrinos, and on the esoteric part, there's astrology. When we tell people as analysts and teachers, oh, I need your birth data in order to be able to calculate your birth chart, and people instantly think, oh, it's astrology. We only use the birth time, and it has to be exact, because in a minute we will be talking about the neutrinos, so it's all about the exact time, exact moment of that neutrino's entry into the crystal that actually defines the body's consciousness and also the personality's consciousness. So astrology is used for calculation purposes. And also we have quantum physics, because the sum is always greater than its parts. And as here you can see the body graph, and since we were talking about Bob Dylan, this is Bob Dylan. Yeah. So here on the, as I was saying, there are, I will be saying in a minute, there are 64 gates that correspond to the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching. And the I Ching is a 3,000-year-old, maybe more, an ancient system of know thyself, as we can say, the first maybe genetic material about the human being, the human DNA. And the 64 gates are in these 9 energy centers. And when 2 centers are connected through a channel, here I don't know if you see. So when 2 centers are connected through a channel, then the gates meanings, the gates frequencies are kind of transformed. So that's why we say the sum is always greater than its parts. And on the esoteric part, that is the Kabbalah. So it's like the tree of life. And then, as I said, the 64 gates in that body graph, in those 9 energy centers, correspond on the scientific side to the 64 codons of our DNA. So this is actually, the body graph is actually a genetic map of each person, but also, like I was saying, of each living being. So we can actually create body graphs for our horses, our dogs, our cats, if we know the exact birth time. And biochemistry or physiology corresponds to these 9 energy centers, or the Hindu Brahmin chakra system in the 7-centered being. So there are, we do not call them chakras, we do not call them energy centers. And here, as you can see, Bob has 2 channels that are connecting 3 of his centers. So he has here definition, and here another definition, and all the remaining 6 energy centers are white. And we are deeply, deeply conditioned through these open centers, because the personality on the right-hand side, and we will go into it, but briefly, the personality is calculated at the time of birth. So when I ask somebody about their time of birth, that gives us first the personality. So that's what astrology actually calculates. But there is another component which we call the design. This is the consciousness of the physical body, and this is 88 degrees from the sun. So this is actually 88 degrees, 88 days before the time of birth. So there is also the consciousness of the physical body that we can totally calculate and differentiate from every other body. And we can see, I mean, and we will come to that in a minute, but the design side is only the body, the vehicle. And the personality side, I mean, because life is movement, and we move through these vehicles, through these bodies. So it is like a limousine, we will see it. And the personality on the right-hand side is who we think we are. So it's just the thoughts. And in a human design analogy, it's the passenger of that car on the back seat. So it does not really have the authority to make decisions. So what is the main difference between the 7-centered Homo sapien and the 9-centered Homo sapien in Transitus is that we are not designed to make decisions with our minds at all. Nobody, none of us. Like when Patrick was doing his presentation, he showed us those beautiful movements of birds and veils, and it's actually the same for us, because in this macrocosm we are microcosms, and we are connected to the whole through these auras. But who we think we are is actually the limitation. So who we think we are, we can think, I need to do this, I need to do that. But we cannot really stay alive by thinking, okay, now I will let my heart pump, now I will let my kidney filter, now I will let my liver do this and that. And we would die in a second. We cannot survive by thinking. And human design says that as we call the not self mind, these openness, everything that we do not have in this body graph in our own unique charts, they drive our not self minds, and they drive the way we think, the way in which we look at the world, and we cannot see the world according to how we are actually designed to see it, as long as we are conditioned by these openness, because from the moment of birth, we come into actually a structure of a seven-centered life. The educational system, the financial system, the political systems, everything, the family systems, the social structures, everything is based on seven-centered way of living. And that is not our way of living anymore. So we cannot really live in the world in the way in which we are equipped to live successfully, because we can easily get lost in this openness. And so, how does it all work? We first have to start with neutrinos. And neutrinos in human design, we keep it really short so that, because we do not get many physicists, actually, at least I don't. So we call it just the breath of stars. And Ra was lucky enough to see the confirmation that neutrinos had mass while he was alive. And the voice told him in '87 that neutrinos had mass, and neutrinos are going through every second, through us, through every living being, through the atmosphere, through the earth, by trillions. And in '87, I'm only repeating what he said, but in '87, none of the physicists were open to the idea that neutrinos had mass. And then in 2015, two physicists from Japan and Canada, from the Super Kamiokande Observatory, they have discovered the neutrino oscillations, which shows that neutrinos have mass. And this is what I actually use in basic courses also to remind myself, because I'm not a physicist. Neutrinos are tiny subatomic particles that move at nearly the speed of light and pass through almost anything without effect. To detect just a handful of the billions streaming through Earth at any given moment, scientists have built giant underground tanks filled with tons of water and shielded from any other radiation. On the rare occasion that a neutrino strikes an atom's nucleus, the collision produces a dim streak of light that contains information about its energy and the direction that it's traveling. So basically, in human design terms, they are programming agents. They are programming us and the world we live in, every living being, all the time, every moment, because they leave behind information. Mass, in this sense, is information. They leave behind information. So if we are not ourselves, we are programmed by by these energies that are not ours all the time. And 3 trillion of neutrinos pass through everything, everywhere, all the time at the speed of light, and it's the structure of the universe. They form a vast grid, a web matrix in which and through which everything is actually connected. And this neutrino ocean, produced by all these living stars, is filtered by crystals of consciousness. As I have shown you here, there is a design consciousness, the consciousness of the physical body, and there's a personality consciousness. And there are 2 crystals, and I have to quote Ra here. He said the voice told him that these are crystals, but these are tiny, 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 tiny things that we cannot really measure their size. So the voice just said crystal so that it is kind of clear to picture it for us, but they are not real crystals in the way like Dan was telling us yesterday about crystals. So it's not a crystal in that sense. The neutrino ocean produced by all these living stars is filtered by crystals of consciousness, and every living thing, every grass, every flower, every tree, every cat is endowed with two crystals of consciousness. The design crystal, an aspect of the original yin. The original yin is the original form that transforms the neutrino data into the body and the life, because we say the body is the life. The mind is not the life, the body is the life. So the design crystal transforms that into the body and the life. We are, the personality is just the witness to the life of the body. And the personality crystal, an aspect of that original yang that transforms the neutrino data into the potential of self-reflected consciousness. And what binds the two of them, and we do not say uners in human design, we call it the biverse. And what binds here the biverse all together, binds us as well, is a third component and the crucial, most crucial element in the structure of a nine-centered being, and also in the structure of every living being, is the magnetic monopole. The magnetic monopole really holds this illusion of being in a body. A thinking person in a body is the result of magnetic monopoles, actually. And one neutrino at a time enters the crystals of consciousness. So we can only filter one neutrino at a time through these crystals. So one of the most asked questions in classes is, okay, then what about twins? Because, you know, twins in astrology almost have, I do not know much about astrology, but they have a very, very similar chart. In human design terms, the entry frequency of that neutrino into the crystal that we call base, and then tone and then color, is most of the time different in twins, because there's a 3-minute difference, there's a 5-minute difference, there's a sometimes 1 hour, yeah, so sometimes a 1 hour difference. So there is a difference at least of 3 minutes or an hour. So we can actually detect that. And I mostly work with mothers and so little children, and nowadays it's easy, and we can fill that up onto the second in the program that we are using to create body graphs. But our fathers or our grandfathers, their times of birth were not really as accurate as today. So it is not really possible to calculate a body graph without an exact time of birth in that sense, because this is really sensitive information based on the science of that neutrino's entry frequency in that base point into the crystal. So there's a crystal entry frequency. And actually what this body graph tells us, when the body and the personality, they come together, there's a magnetic field that is created. And when I say I, actually it's not me, but it's just the frequency that I'm emitting to the outside world. But the cosmic joke in here is my mind only identifies with what is inside my head, whereas everybody who's in my environment, in my aura, perceives me with my body, with my design, which is unconscious to me. So here you can start seeing why it is so kind of hard for human beings to understand and tolerate each other. So as long as we are not living our designs, we are actually blind to ourselves, and then also blind to others, because we cannot know ourselves. When we do not really know what is ours, then we cannot really identify, and then we can blame and shame the other. And the seven-centered, as Ra called it, way of life is a life of blaming and shaming, either ourselves or the other. So then comes human design, and then tells us, okay, this and this and this do not belong to you. So you are actually frustrated or angry or bitter about something that is actually not yours in the first place to begin with. So to differentiate what is ours and what is not, this system is an amazing tool. And to see that in context, these crystals and the magnetic monopole, to put them into the body graph. In our design, these three elements have specific locations within the body. The personality crystal sits above the scalp, and yesterday we were I guess it was Dan talking about the chakras and the energies. And here, as you can see, it is actually above the scalp. So it's not really inside the body. It's above the body. The passenger on the back seat is not even in the body, does not know what the body needs. So it's in the head center, as we call it in human design terms, and it is the intelligence that we recognize as who we think we are. And that is not to say that we won't think at all, but that is to say we cannot make our decisions with our minds. So my mind is good for all of you, but my mind is not good for me. Or the same, Dan's mind is perfect for all of us, but if Dan is making his decisions with his mind, then he might be frustrated. So that is all about actually decision making, because this is how we navigate life. And the personality crystal is actually in the pineal gland. And the design crystal is within the skull. We call it the ajna center, and it is the intelligence that operates and maintains the physical body. So this is the consciousness of the physical body, but it sits in the ajna, so it kind of seems like it's conflicting, but it's not. So the personality crystal in the head center and the design crystal in the ajna center are as you can see here, the basic components that control who we are. And where am I? Yeah, the design crystal is in the pituitary gland and hypothalamus, and the magnetic monopole that holds them together in this forced marriage. Because, you know, and we also talked about this in the last days, the mind is not identified with the body. The mind actually does not like the body. And the mind only wants to control the body. And the forced marriage is through the magnetic monopole that holds them in this illusion together. And the magnetic monopole is in the sternum. For human beings, it's in the sternum. And Ra was saying, actually, I wanted to ask Patrick that day when he was making his first presentation about the different frequencies of the heart, of the brain, of different organs. And Ra is saying, if we would be successful in distinguishing and differentiating each frequency of the body, because movement creates a frequency. And if we would be able to eliminate all those frequencies, then the frequency that would be left behind would be the frequency of the magnetic monopole. And that is possible for each unique being. And the magnetic monopole not only keeps us in this illusion together, but it also gives us our trajectory in life, gives us our direction. So when we see that analogy, the metaphor of the limousine, the magnetic monopole is the driver of the vehicle. So the vehicle, the body, is the design side, and then on the driver's seat is the magnetic monopole, and the car is already designed approximately 3 months, 88 days, before the personality is there. So the magnetic monopole and the design crystal are actually happy. They are happy, so they are of course, at the moment of life emerging, conceptualization, they separate. But the design crystal is actually in love, we can say it, in love, because they are embedded before life begins. a magnetic monopole is embedded in each design crystal, as we will talk about it in a short time. So the organic driver of the vehicle is the magnetic monopole. So what does it tell us? Even before we are born, actually we have a vehicle that knows where to go. But at the time of birth, we can call it, Ra used to call it vanity. It's the vanity of the human mind that it thinks that it can direct one's self into a direction that it thinks it is correct. Yeah. And so when we get to the beginning of the way in which incarnation operates, and incarnation is carne, is meat, and incarnation is coming into the meat. So, huh?
Meat suit.
Yes, definitely. So how the incarnation process operates, to understand this, basically, we have two crystal fields. I actually had more slides, but I have taken those slides out because yesterday then you said there is not enough evidence about the Big Bang. So I actually took those slides out about the cosmic yin and the cosmic yang and the banging together. And so I will just start with the crystal fields. So the personality crystal field, which we can maybe, because we were talking about ensoulment and Christo and crystals, so the personality can, in that sense, be called the soul, because it actually is, coming at the last moment into the vehicle, and then it goes back to its fractal. There are 16 fractals, but also I will not go into that because that would take maybe more than 2 or 3 days. But there are 16 fractals, so the personality crystal after that, if we die correctly, and I will also talk about that a little, goes back to its crystal. And so this personality crystal field surrounds the Earth and its environment. So it's out there. The fractals are out there, the fractals of personality crystals. But the design crystals, as we call them, design crystal bundles, are in the mantle of the Earth. And the numbers are very, very difficult to imagine because, as I said, every living thing, every grass, every ant, every living being, we cannot really imagine the numbers, has a design crystal because they all have a body. A tree, an ant, a bug, a cat, everything has a living body. So the design crystals are in every cell, in every living thing. So you can imagine we're talking about numbers that are really hard to look at in terms of zeros. And every design crystal that is out of manifestation, meaning that is not yet incarnated, that has not yet come into a meat box, has embedded within it its magnetic monopole. So every living being has its own magnetic monopole. Because I'm not a physicist, but as far as I know, physicists were looking for a magnetic monopole, not in every living being a magnetic monopole. And I did not do that, but last December, some of you might have heard about it at the Cavendish lab. A Turkish professor, actually, Professor Mete Atatürk and his team have said that they have discovered the magnetic monopole and the field. I actually wanted to approach and ask him, do you consider this as an opportunity to look into actually every living being? It's out there, it's not one. It's in every living being. The numbers are beyond our imagination. And this is how it actually keeps that illusion of separateness. Each of us has a design crystal with its own magnetic monopole, but actually in the, let's say, the cosmic shattering, instead of that other thing, in the cosmic shattering, they were all together. And after that cosmic shattering, they were all just spread to the universe and biverse and the earth. And so they actually yearn to be together again. The design crystal and the magnetic monopole, that's actually, in terms of human design, the basic definition of love. I will, if that's okay, reply the questions at the end after I finish talking. So yeah, every design crystal has its own magnetic monopole, and so this is the mystery of love. And the whole secret to life is that life can only begin when the magnetic monopole disembeds or separates from the design crystal at the moment of conception. So if there is no life, then then there is no life, because they are still together. But the moment they separate, then a life begins emerging in the womb. And so all the design crystals within the earth, all the potentials of all the vehicles, of all the forms, all the bodies that you can imagine, from cellular, one cell being to human, all have a magnetic monopole embedded in them. So those design crystals that are sitting there out of form are all sitting there with a magnetic monopole, and that magnetic monopole has the capacity to find its right direction. And it is called the magnetic monopole. So it's not repelling, it's almost always attracting. And as Ra used to call them, he calls them the not letting go thing. So it captures and then does not let go. So it's really the not letting go thing. So once it is separate from the design crystal in its electromagnetic proximity, it is holding those two crystals actually in that forced marriage together. And the right direction is essential. The right direction is for us humans, how we navigate life is through direction, and we find our directions through decision making. And decision making, as I was saying, is not mental, it's through strategy and inner authority, which is electromagnetic. And here the process, the incarnation process, is initiated when a design crystal with its magnetic monopole is called up into a male within 8 hours before there will be a conception, 8 hours before there is going to be an orgasm. So the program is so deeply programmed that even conception is, again, electromagnetically defined 8 hours before. So, and it is working through harmony and resonance and dissonance. So the frequency that the design crystal and the monopole emits out is found by the design crystal called, of the male. So there is this kind of coming together, and it's a deeply organized program that dictates the rules. So there is a timing for birth and there is a timing of death. I will not go into more detail because it is very detailed and I could not really squeeze it into 40 minutes. So I will just skip to death. So this being has come into life, has lived its life, and when the time of death comes, then, as I said, there is no life as long as the magnetic monopole and the design crystal are together. So at the moment of death, this design crystal starts going down into the earth, but before going down, it merges again with its magnetic monopole. So there is that moment of coming back together, back to oneness, back to love moment at that for the body. And the mind, the head, the personality does not identify with the body. So the design does not, or the magnetic monopole does not look back and wave at the personality goodbye. No, they just come together, they are happy, they go back to the mantle of the earth, and then that motion, that movement creates kind of like a opposite movement, like launching of a rocket into space. And the personality crystal goes into the opposite direction, into its fractal. I mean, actually, it waits to be picked up by its fractal. And we talked about dying correctly with some of you individually, and also Dan was talking about it yesterday. In terms of human design, if one lives correctly, one dies correctly. And dying correctly in terms of human design is leaving the body untouched, undisturbed for at least 72 hours. Because when the design crystal and the magnetic monopole leave the body still generates electricity that is enough for the personality crystal to go back to its fractal. But when the body is touched, when the body is disturbed, like some of us come from Islamic countries where the weather conditions do not really permit for the culture to preserve the dead for 3 days because it can start really smelling. And so what happens, they just, wash the body, bury it underground. And the personality crystal, I mean, if we want to die correctly, cannot go underneath the ground. This is where the design crystal belongs. The personality crystal belongs out there. So for 72 hours, being untouched or undisturbed is actually the Tibetan way, in the Bardo Todol. And so they have kept their dead, and they have read them, the Bardo Todol. They did not really touch them. This most probably is the reason why they have so many incarnations of Dalai Lama and lamas. So when the personality crystal goes back to its fractal, it actually carries the whole information of that incarnation. And yesterday, Dan was talking about that. So there is not really an incarnation, but he was saying that there is a portion of a, what were you saying then? That there's a portion of a soul fraction.
Soul fragment.
Yeah, soul fragment.
Instead of reincarnation.
Uh-huh.
Soul fragment.
Yeah. So when the personality crystal carries that information back to its fractal, the whole fractal gets that information. But not so many people are able to do that these days. The four religions, they do not really permit that to us. We are just dead and we are buried or cremated, whatever. But yeah, no, for 72 hours, the body has to be untouched, undisturbed. After 72 hours, doesn't matter what happens to the body. But the first 72 hours, it is really correct to keep it untouched. So somebody has to maybe guard the body so that,
Can it be
the body.
frozen for 72 hours?
Frozen. I mean, to be frozen, you still have to touch the body and move it somewhere.
Oh, you just leave it there?
Yeah, untouched, undisturbed. Untouched, undisturbed for 72 hours. 5 minutes, okay. So the magnetic monopole, I will answer the questions later. So the magnetic monopole in that sense has a binary function in a human being. It is the key to our direction in this incarnation, I mean guiding us into the womb and out into the life, out of that womb, and then into death, as I was saying. And it is our geometric driver moving us along our trajectory of destiny, guiding us along the axis of our lunar nodes, linking us to our geometry. Since we do not have the time to go into the basics of the G center that holds the magnetic monopole, this yellow form in the middle is the G center, called the G center, is in the sternum, and it also holds the magnetic monopole. Has actually 8 gates. 4 of them are for direction, 4 of them are for universal love, self-love, and love of humanity, and love of the physical body. And on the other side, the other function of that magnetic monopole is that it's holding us in this relative separateness of a human being. So each of us, in this sense, this part is created by this separation. So the glue that holds us together in these forms and maintains our illusion of difference and separation. And it's ironic that the instrument, an instrument of separateness, at the same time can be an instrument of love. They all happen together in this center. So all our lives we look for love. I mean, having this center defined or not does not matter. We look for love all our lives after that moment of conception. So actually the true love in terms of human design can be found within one's self. And only then can we truly love the other. And so yeah, I will just wrap it up, and then so I did not really go into the physics, because I have seen in 40 minutes it's almost impossible. But the other reason to separateness is when I was talking about the neutrino entering the personality or design crystal, and there's a crystal entry frequency that we call base. The base level is actually our way in and out of our place in the totality for every living being again. And through this we can begin to recognize what our place in the totality is. And out of that comes all the other nuances, individual nuances, and we can only perceive that after the color level. So we are one actually at the base level, but we don't get to deal with it consciously in the world beyond this color level. And after the color, then we have seen the body graph. This is what we call the surface. And this is unfortunately what we deal with, because not everybody knows human design, although it's really getting popular these days. We have to first deal with the surface until we can come to the base, until we can really work with that base level. And there is a barrier that prevents us going to there and perceiving that, because we have to really be kind of in that illusion of separateness, so that we can filter different perspectives of consciousness, because every personality crystal sees one perspective of the whole totality, because the angle is different for each of us to see something. We are here maybe 80 people. If there would be a car accident, every story that would come out of each of us would be different, because we see it differently from different angles. So actually at the base level we are one, but we cannot see it. We are not designed to see it. We are designed to see it differently. So in terms of, when I wrap up, in terms of human design, there is no enlightenment. There is only enlightening the other. So I can share something with you, and like in the last 3 days we have seen amazing knowledge up here. So we can be lights for each other, but not really, I cannot really be the light for myself, but through the help of the others I can be a vessel for light. So, and before I finish, I actually want to invite you to listen to Ra for just 1.5 minutes, if that's okay. And I guess the audio would play, right?
We can. I have a dream, and I've been watching this dream unfold all the years that I've been involved in this process.
the voice told me a lot of strange things. And beginning with neutrinos with mass and so forth and so on. And slowly but surely I've seen, substantiation of these things that I was told in a mystical event, which in and of itself is incredible. But the monopole, in my dream, one of these days down the road, as human design touches more and more lives, it'll touch the right being. You see, I don't think it's actually hard to find it. It's clear to me that nobody's ever known where to look. And it's in our sternum, after all. And somewhere down the road, some biophysicist of some kind or another, because you're going to need to have all of those tools, will figure out some kind of experiment to verify it or not. And it's certainly going to be there in the wave, sooner or later, and the door, I know that the door is closing on the ability of humanity to be able to resolve such deep principles. But for me, if there is a key to understanding the nature of everything, and I mean everything that exists is rooted in the monopole, holding it together in the illusion of this totality that seems to exist.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Maybe a couple of short questions.
Thanks very much for the presentation. Contraception and date of birth are very generally used in legal terms, but fertilization is different to contraception. So there's a legal saying that says, I am whole and accountable from fertilization to last breath. And it's fertilization where life begins. That's when the divine gene is. So should it not be fertilization as opposed to contraception?
Conception. I said conception.
Not contraception.
I said conception.
Sorry, I meant conception.
That's what I meant. I mean, when the egg, and there is not really, we don't call it breaking of the barrier, but the egg actually opens itself to the correct frequency of the correct sperm. So at that time of sperm entering the egg, I don't know what, because my main language is Turkish, so that's how I call it conception. I don't know if you call that fertilization.
Fertilization is the job.
Okay, we can use fertilization. Okay, what is the question?
I was just looking for clarity.
Can you speak to the microphone?
Okay, it's the moment, we do not call to have to call it anything. It's the moment of sperm entering the cell, the egg. Let's just leave it at that.
That's fertilization.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think the interesting question is here about the moment of orgasm and its relation to ensoulment.
Uh-huh.
Well, I can just repeat it. I guess it's more of a comment, but yeah, because Dan has talked about this particular moment of conception as the charge density of orgasm, the bliss moment. This is really definitely has to do with the harmonic inclusion that's made possible by this particular moment, and that speaks to ensoulment.
Imploding the memory connection.
Yes.
Well, ensoulment in terms of human design, we can only talk about the soul versus the body graph. When the personality crystal is actually coming into the. It does not matter. I have shown it to you anyways, the body graph. So the personality crystal comes into the body 88 days before. That, of course, brings its own problems, because in Christianity or in Islam, the abortion is a big topic, and when we think of ensoulment or where the spark happens, the soul comes in the moment of fertilization or conception, in terms of human design is not true. In terms of human design, it's not true. I will not go into any arguments here. The design, the body is there, I mean, in a normal term of 9 months, it comes to the body 3 months before, so around the 6th month. And before that, it's just the meat box, as we were saying it. And that actually clears a lot of the discussions that we are having, you know, these days about root cell genetics, the genetic discoveries that use cell technologies. And so in terms of human design, there is no soul, no personality in the first 6 months. So that is the
magnetic monopole.
when the design crystal is cold.
They simultaneously come in at the same time.
As I have said, that every design crystal, every form has its own magnetic monopole. And so at the moment of conception or fertilization, I will use conception here, the design crystal that is cold has its own magnetic monopole already. And so after that fertilization, the design crystal, so the body of the fetus, starts growing inside the womb, and the magnetic monopole and the design crystal separate. This is when life begins.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
We're really out of time. Last question. Thank you. Last question. It was so much fun.
Thank you so much for your talk. Curious about the definitions and the way you categorize design and personality. So, from my understanding, personality is how you react, act in certain events, and there could not be a certain reaction without a physical existence. So how can there be a personality prior to a physical existence if your personality is
No,
very-
there is not. You have misunderstood it. The body is there. The personality comes, I mean, it completes its programming, let's say it correctly, at the moment of birth. But its crystal comes into the physical body that was being programmed there since 6 months, since the moment of that fertilization. So the body has its own consciousness. As I was saying, you cannot think to live. You cannot live by thinking, let my heart beat now. No. So
It's all
the
part of one.
yes, you are not only the body, you are not only the thoughts inside your head, but when the two of them come together, when they are really in this forced marriage held together by the magnetic monopole, then there's an electromagnetic field that is created. I did not have the time to go into different aura types. Actually, human design is a decision-making tool that says everybody has a different aura type, and every aura type has its own strategy. And according to your design, you also have an inner authority that guides that strategy. So the decisions are not made with the personality, with the mind, but how that electromagnetic field is designed to navigate life. So that's what we call strategy and authority.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Is there a way people can reach you? Do you have an email address or website that you would like to share?
Of course, yeah. Here is my email address, and
cerenuner@mailbox.org.
sometimes I may be slow in replying emails, but I do reply them.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening.
In other words, the fetus doesn't think.